guys, welcome to the very first of the Builder's Badge series. We're going to be covering Badge 0 right now. This is about the CoStarter's Canvas. And this entire series really is going to be about the Builder's Badges, which are really meant to be milestones that you guys can put together as you're building your entrepreneurial journey and as you're beginning to work towards launching and possibly even getting investment in your business as you move forward. Each one of the Builder's Badges, except for the first couple, are going to be elements of a pitch. And the reason we're doing pitches is that we're looking at pitches as kind of your articulated business plan. You could write out your 24-page business plan. A lot of people still do that, but very few people ever read a business plan. And yet the same amount of work goes into a pitch. And the great advantage of a pitch is that you can actually articulate your business to people like customers or partners or anybody else or investors eventually that you would need to be able to present to, and you can get immediate feedback. So that's part of the reason we would like to pitch rather than a full business plan, is because you're putting the same amount of work into it. You're still having to do it, and yet it's a lot more flexible. It's a lot more usable. There's a lot more utility to the whole process, and you can actually really engage other people in a way that helps you refine your process. So that's why we're focusing on the pitch. The first two badges, the CoStarter's Canvas and then the customer persona, are not actually part of a pitch, but they're essential elements before you go into a pitch. And the CoStarter's Canvas really is, we're calling it Badge 0 because it's more about the first way. It's helping you think through what your business is from the very, very beginning. So it's kind of like taking an idea for a business and turning it into a business idea. An idea for a business is essentially the idea that it's mainly about you. It's about what you're offering. You know, Celeste, for you to offer portraits for other people, or paintings, or services, or a product that you're offering. Whatever it is that you're offering, that's really what the idea for a business is. A business idea, though, is really about your customer. It's really about what they need and how your product interacts with their needs, and then being able to engage them around their needs, meeting those needs, and then validating the fact that you're offering that value in a way through revenue. So revenue is not only helping sustain you, it's also really giving you the validation that you're meeting people's needs because people are paying you to meet those needs. So that's really what the CoStarter's Canvas is great for, is it helping you really think through making that shift from what it is you're offering to who it is you're serving. So from an idea for business to a business idea, as it were. And again, the whole point of doing these conversations, these recordings in this way, is that we want to be able to do this together. So this really does become an ongoing conversation. For the Builder's Badges, if you want to get, for instance, the Builder's Badge for the CoStarter's Canvas, you'd watch this video in the think tank, you'd fill out your canvas, and then you contact a mentor and go through it with the mentor. And then it will be the mentor, and it may take 2 or 3 sessions. Mentor may send you back and ask you to do a little bit more. But after those sessions, it would be the mentor that then recommends you for the badge, and that's where you would earn your badge. You get put it up on your profile and say sort of how far along it is you are in building your business. So that's the way we're focusing on these things. Any questions on that so far?
Did you mention how a mentor would be assigned or anything like that?
So it is up to you to contact the mentor. So
Okay.
you would need to, in the mentor's tank, in the resource tank, that's where you would go. I'm actually in there right now, and I'd love to work with you if you wanted to do that particularly. So I'd love to be your mentor, or you can contact one of the other mentors. We're getting 2 or 3 more here in this next week, hopefully. In fact, John may even be one of the mentors here coming up very, very soon. And then that process, and you set up a meeting with them, you have your meeting, you go over the stuff, and again, the mentor may talk you through it. They may ask you some more questions. They may send you back and say, hey, could you spend, let's meet again in a couple of weeks when you've got all your pieces together, or next week, or whatever it is. But that way, when you get to the pitch tank, when we start forming the shark tank, if you get all the way up there, everybody who's there and who's looking at your pitch knows that you've had a conversation about every element of your pitch. So that brings in the validation for you that your pitch really is solid and that you know what you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, so this is the CoStarter's Canvas. Really, the idea is here, it's a one-page business plan, and it's a very simple format because it is primarily, there are a couple more canvases, the Lean Canvas, Osterwilder's Business Model Canvas, if you guys have seen those. Both of those are a lot more complex and therefore more advanced once you get farther along in your business and you're really thinking about resources and processes of how to build your product. Those canvases are a lot better. The great thing about the CoStarters Canvas is you can do it at the very, very beginning when you're really getting your idea together and figuring out how am I going to take my idea for a business and really turn it into a business idea. The biggest focus is the customer, which is over here on the left. And eventually you want to get to revenue. And of course, there's startup needs and costs at the bottom. But everything in the middle is really about how you're going to be able to get from your customer to a point where you're really sharing value and ultimately making revenue in your business. So I'm going to walk through this. There's somebody in our community who's doing a women's gym. I'm not going to try to represent her women's gym, but I'm going to start from the idea of perhaps we were building a women's gym. What would this look like? And because I think it gives a really good definable customer and a definable way to actually get towards revenue. So this is the way that I might fill this out if I were to build a women's gym. And a specific kind of women's gym too. And again, you want to start with your customer. So in the customer section, one of the things you want to think about first of all is that you don't want to just put in like one or two things. What you want to do is describe your customer as best you can. So for instance, this is the way that I would describe the customers for my women's gym. And again, I'm not a woman, so I'm not pretending to make sure that this is going to be the greatest women's gym, but this is the way that I would conceive of this. They'll be focusing on women maybe 30 to 45, particularly professionals. So women who have been in a career for a while, they've really been out there killing it in the job front, but in the process, perhaps they've sacrificed some of their health goals in the process of building their careers. And now they're coming back and realizing, so they've been in the business world maybe for a few years, and they're beginning to realize, man, I really need to start focusing back on my health and get myself back in shape here. So the career maybe has gotten in the way of their health. Um, but at the same time, because they feel a little out of shape, maybe they're not feeling like they want to just go into a gym where everybody looks beautiful and perfect shape. And especially if there's a bunch of men walking around who are, particularly beefy or something like this, it may feel really uncomfortable for them to walk in feeling out of shape, walking into a gym where there are people that could see them in ways that they might not feel as flattering. So they want privacy. They don't want to have to feel embarrassed in a really big gym. And they want to be able to relate to other women who are also in this same stage of their health journey. So particularly in urban context, let's think about a city maybe the size of Colorado Springs, maybe going up to Denver, but something along those kinds of lines. We're going to focus on Southern Colorado Springs right now, but that the focus is not so much I want to make myself look beautiful so much as I want to get healthy because I feel like my career has taken the priority. Maybe my family has taken some priority. Now I want to get back in shape. I want to start focusing again on my health. So you see what I've done here is that we're not just saying we want to focus on women. There's a lot of women. There's whatever 3.5 billion. I guess if we count 7 billion. I think we may be up to 8 billion. So close to 4 billion women in the world. We're not talking about serving everybody. We're talking about serving people in a particular location with a particular set of needs, and people particularly who are in a transition. So they are moving from focusing entirely on their career to now want to focusing on their health. And that transition is a great place to meet people for a business because those are people that really have a need. They have a desire for things. So when you're filling out the customer section, make sure you put in multiple qualifiers, bringing the level of detail about who these people are down to as much granular space as you possibly can. One way to do that, one really good way to do that too, is get out a separate sheet of paper and actually draw out who the customer is. So actually take a piece of paper and draw it, because drawing actually uses a different part of your brain. It forces you to think differently about the kind of concepts that you're trying to bring to the table. And so when you draw it out, you draw out the kind of interaction she may be having, the kind of goals she might have. It's gonna generate a different set of ideas than you're gonna get if you're simply filling out the form in a list format like this. So the next blank that you want to really focus on then is the problem. And the problem is going to be, for this women's gym that we're focusing on, is that women feel out of shape, obviously. These are people that feel somewhat unhealthy, perhaps. They feel like they are wanting to get their goals back in order. They want to feel like they're not just focused on one thing or two things. They really want to start thinking about their whole life again. And that they want to feel also safe. And that the problem is that walking into a gym where everybody is fit and healthy and building their, doing bodybuilding and other things, may just not feel comfortable if somebody's feeling out of shape. So we really want to target people at the beginning of their health journey. Um, the alternatives then are whatever they could do without you. So for instance, for this, we would be talking about regular gyms. So the standard kind of community gyms, and there's all sorts of them. There's, Gold's Gym, which is really bodybuilding, and then there's other things like Planet Fitness, which is primarily for commuters and others. She might feel more comfortable there, but really our customers probably wanting to really be around other women, so that she doesn't feel like there's maybe some of that sexual tension or whatever else, or the attraction kind of thing, the feel like we have to perform for members of the opposite sex. We just really want to focus on our health. We want to get healthy. We want to feel like we're back in a place where we feel good about ourselves. So we could also do that at home, but of course, home, we've got problems with accountability. And how often do you really do that when you're coming home every day and you're really, really tired? Um, you could also join clubs, but then you've got some of the same problems of people there may be like in great shape, and I don't feel like I'm in great shape. I'm still at the beginning of my journey. So my alternatives are anything that I could do to accomplish the same goals that I currently have available, but maybe not to the same level that what we want to target are really are meeting goals in a better way. So the solution then is the thing that we're really offering them. This is really the statement of our product. So this would be a gym tailored to professional women who are in the early stages of their fitness journey. That's our solution. We want to focus on helping give women that in that kind of stage a place where they can feel safe to get healthy and to get their goals back up to where they want them to be. Benefits are more the list of things that solution does for them particularly. So this solution provides them with privacy, provides them with relatability, the ability to relate to other women who are also in the same stage of their fitness journey. It's safe to come as they are. They don't have to get in shape first before they feel presentable or they feel attractive enough or anything like that. They feel like they can just come in and start getting healthy, and that's what they really want. And it's a supportive community of people, professionals, driven people, people that have a lot of capacity, but just haven't been able to focus on their health for a while. So community of people just like them. Um, and the advantage then is really what's the difference? What's the difference from the alternative? So you have your customer, you have your alternatives. The advantage is the thing that makes the our alternative, our benefit better than what their alternatives are. So messaging then is how do we communicate that? So here it's be a professional and be healthy. You can have both worlds. You don't have to just focus on your career and be, and be driven in that kind of way. You can also feel good, you can feel healthy, you can get yourself in a place where you feel really good about who you are and in your own skin, as it were. Come as you are. We are with you. These all these kind of supportive messages that this is a place where women can feel safe, where they can feel like they can accomplish their goals with other people that are in places like them. Distribution, then the next stage. This is again these two places, the message and the distribution, are about getting our solution, our benefits, and our advantage out into the world in a way that starts making revenue. So for this one, distribution obviously is not, we're not distributing a product here. What we're trying to do is get women to come to us. So we're trying to get the customers to come into our space. So free trials, especially community trials. You could do coupons. You could do free workouts. You could do free classes within the community, get them to come into the community, do a class, and they're looking around, they're looking at the equipment and thinking, wow, that's great. Maybe I'd come here and actually join a membership. So there's all sorts of ways to attract them in. There might even be community activities that you could do, things that women might actually value, speakers or other things that professional women might really value that you do in the space to get people to come into the space, experience the space a little bit, and then consider the possibility of joining and becoming a member. One other thought too, especially the other thing that you can be thinking about in distribution is an MVP. An MVP is a minimum viable product, and it's something that every entrepreneur really needs to be thinking about, especially if you're trying to offer a lot of services to a lot of people, or you're trying to prove the value of your product. So for instance, for the woman who's actually building this gym, this is something she's even considering, I believe, which is the idea of use a different gym or another space or a dance class, a dance studio or something else, and offer some classes there to get some of the women in that would actually pay for it. So they pay for your services for your class. Say we do a 3-week series and we just have this fitness journey process, or maybe we do an audit of your fitness state and how you feel about things and what you really want, or whatever it is. Engaging customers in a way that shows that yes, we have something that's of real value, and that's why we want to build the gym. When we build the gym, it's going to cost a lot more. It's going to be a lease, it's going to be equipment, there's going to be a lot of costs that go into that. So find some ways to be able to prove the value before you get there, and that's all part of distribution, is how do you get your value out there in a way that shows that that value is really valuable. And then the revenue is ways that you'd actually pay for it, or you'd actually start generating revenue. So perhaps there's a basic subscription, $39 a month, 20, it doesn't really matter. Whatever the cost is, whatever comparable kind of context might be, you want to make sure that you're comparing yourself, making sure that you're putting the price of the kind of value you're offering on this. But right now you're just guessing. You can refine all of this later. None of this has to be set in stone right now. So this is the kind of canvas that you can do multiple times over. But things like upgraded to classes or personal training, or maybe there's premium memberships that give you access to the classes and everything included if you do upgrades. So ways that you can step the membership level up can all be a part of how you're generating revenue and how you're communicating value to your customers. Startup needs. These two blanks at the bottom are really to help you start brainstorming through how you're going to bring this out and bring this to the world. So startup needs things like big picture, space and equipment. Of course, it's going to cost a lot of money. So an MVP might be really valuable for something like this before you get started. Classes in another space to start building a community. Again, this is more the MVP kind of thing, but showing value before you spend big money and then seeking investment as you go. So for something like a gym, you're probably going to need an investor. So showing that you've got that value can be really important in order to be able to get that level of value. And of course, having a great pitch is also a big part of making sure that you can get the kind of investments that you need. Cost can be anything from lease agreements, staff, general trainers, class leaders, marketing and community ideas, and of course, equipment is going to be a huge cost at some point or another. But again, this is starting to help you brainstorm the kinds of resources that you're going to need in order to be able to make this process or make this business work. Now, again, here's the difference that than just having a business idea. When we put it all together like this, what we're able to look at now is the kind of value that we're delivering to customers and how we're actually delivering it to them. So we're not only just thinking about the customer that we just want to go out there and sell it on the corner. We want to be able to target a particular group of people who then feel like you're there for them, as opposed to somebody, if you're just opening a gym, a general gym, well, it's kind of for everybody, and yeah, maybe I'll join that one, or you don't distinguish yourself from any other gym. This one is really focused on a particular group of people who now feel like, oh, you're here for me. I'm different. You're different. You're here to meet my kinds of needs. And that can really change the way a customer feels about your product and your business. So by being able to identify both who the customer is, and again, take a piece of paper out and draw it out before you make your list. So you're not just writing down a list. And think about what the problem is. What are their alternatives right now? Where are they going right now? Why don't they like those alternatives? And getting to the solutions, the benefits, and the advantages, and then how do you get that out into the world in order to start generating revenue? All of these things help you figure out what this canvas helps you figure out all of those pieces together so that you can really start thinking through, what is my business? So again, take some time, fill this out. This really should take you 15, 20 minutes the first time through. And it's fine if you have to do this 10 times because it's 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't take a long time. It gives you a chance to be able to run through it. If you have more than one customer, you could even do one of these for each kind of customer that you have so that you're really thinking through their customer journey and each stage of the process. And that way you're really thinking through, how does my business serve different kinds of people? But one way or the other, take fill it out, go find a mentor, like we were talking about with Celeste there earlier. Go find a mentor, talk about it with them. They may have some ideas, they may ask you some questions, they may want you to redo it a couple times. All of that's fine. Again, this is a great step for the early stage of your journey. What kind of questions might you have about all of this?
So, Thomas, I'm looking at this. I've helped a lot of people fill something like this out, a business canvas.
Sure.
When someone's just starting the process, they say, I see a lot of my friends, for example, in this particular case, really want to go work out. They feel like they need to just get healthier, but they don't like any of the alternatives that are out there. And that's kind of where they start. They're having coffee with their friends and they say, man, I just wish there was a place we could go where guys weren't staring at us all the time. They kind of start there, but they would have no idea, my guess is, how to answer most of these questions without some kind of a coach or help or somebody who's done it before. I mean, I've been interacting with the woman who's doing this a little bit and
Uh-huh.
pumping out some stuff to her in terms of questions around a business plan. But some of the stuff I'm showing her, she's never seen before.
Sure.
Um, so where do you start here?
So part of what this canvas is really meant to be is a first take. It's not meant, this is not meant to be the final way that you're getting everything together. This is really helping you convert your idea into more of a business idea. So I agree with you. I think that sometimes it really does take somebody like you, John, or like another mentor to be able to ask some of those good questions, because we don't always know. Most of us, when we come to a business, and Celeste, you know what artisans are like too. We can do this where we've got something we really love. We really want to bring this thing that we love to the world, and it's our baby, and it's the thing that we've spent time building. Um, and part of the problem then is that we get it out there and we just assume that if we build it well, then everybody's going to come. And that rarely happens in most businesses. Most of the time, you really need to start looking at it from the customer's perspective, which once you start building your business, you are no longer the customer. You're no longer the one who's actually looking at it from the position of, would I buy this? You are now stuck in the position of I'm the one who built this, which of course is part of the reason you love it. You're the one that built it. It's called the IKEA effect, that I will value something I build over something that a professional builds any day of the week. Um, so so that's really the starting point. I guess to answer your question, John, I think the starting point really is to just try it, to just get out there, fill it out. I would even also recommend, in addition to drawing out the customer, is to print this out and do it by hand. Again, doing it by hand sometimes forces you to think a little bit differently than when you're sitting in front of a computer screen and just typing in words. Uh, don't use AI for this part. Do this yourself. Really think through this. Once you've done it, then use AI and generate some more ideas and get some more things together. But get your brain going in this kind of direction. That's what this canvas is really all about, is helping you really think through this as a business, not just as a product.
Mhm.
Does that answer your
Yeah, I
question?
would. Yeah, and I would say, in my experience, there's a couple things. One is if you're a verbal processor, you need to get with somebody and say these things out loud to them
Yes.
because your brain is going to kick on when your mouth is moving. And there's just a lot of people that are like, especially I think creative entrepreneurs tend to be more um, like that. They're not in their heads, they communicate. So
Mhm.
get out there and talk to people about these things. The other thing too is don't be afraid to ask somebody who's done it.
Mhm.
You know, would you explain to me what these things are and how would you help me answer these questions? Don't try to do it by yourself.
Yep. Well, and that's part of the reason that when we're doing the badges, we're saying to get your badge, go talk to a mentor. Find a mentor that would be willing to talk you through the whole process. So, all right. What about Jason, Celeste, Luke? Any questions from you guys?
Yeah, I got a question, Tom.
Okay, go for it.
So you've known me for a few years now, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not really a business. I think more ministry, nonprofit.
Sure.
How would this change for a nonprofit?
That's a great question, Jason. It in some ways, the first half of this, the customer through the solution, the benefits and the advantages, that's going to be the same no matter whether you're doing a business, whether you're doing a nonprofit. You're still solving a problem for somebody. So figuring that part out is still got to be the same. The hard part about a nonprofit is that the buyer is not the end user. In other words, the buyer is either the government, if you're getting governmental funding, or it's the grant provider, or it's the individual donor. That the buyer, the ones that are giving you money, are not the ones that actually benefit from your services. So the messaging actually has to come twofold now. Now the messaging actually has to go to the individuals for whom you're doing the service, and it has to go to the donor. And you have to provide, in some ways, a different value proposition for the donor than you actually have to provide for the individual that's actually receiving services. So in a nonprofit situation, it might even be worth doing two canvases, particularly for the second half, for the messaging, distribution, and revenue, to really think through what's the value that I'm providing to a donor that's different than the value that I'm providing to the end user, as it were. Does that answer your question, or you still want to throw something else out about that?
No, that makes sense. I mean, because really, you do have two customers.
Yes, you really do.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And there are other businesses that also have a double-sided market. So for instance, Facebook, Facebook has to satisfy all of its users, but you do that for free. But then they sell the users to the advertisers. So really their revenue is coming from users who are happy and who are getting content. And then they're selling that list, or they're selling those eyeballs essentially to advertisers who are then providing them with revenue. So we the users are actually the product that Facebook is selling to advertisers. So in some ways, you would need both. You would need two different canvases. You'd need one that your customer is somebody who wants to connect with his friends, around the world or back at college or something else. And what's the problem? What's the alternatives? How do you do that? Well, you can call them up. You can, text on, well, WhatsApp. That's also Facebook. So you'd have a whole different canvas for the user. But then for the advertiser, what's the value? What's the problem for the advertiser? He doesn't know how to find his customers. The problem is he's trying to sell stuff. He doesn't know where to find these people. The alternatives could be just looking people up, cold calling, other things. The solution then is, hey, we've got the entire world on our platform. Throw this thing out there. We'll help you target the ads, and you can reach the people that you really need to sell to. So in some ways, you would need two candidates for a double-sided market like that. Other questions?
How many times do you think that you'd have to iterate this before you got to, the next step? Like, how clear does this have to be before you can then begin working through each one of these boxes by itself and actually implementing them?
No, that's also a good question. I would say that really I would use the CoStarter's Canvas, and there are some programs that really just focus on the CoStarter's Canvas. But in some ways, your pitch isn't too far off of this in general. Your pitch, you've got to know your customer persona, which is going to be badge number one. That's really just focusing on that first box, but it's focusing on it with a lot more detail. So this is really kind of getting you the high level view of how all of this fits together. But then you do have to go back in and figure out your customer persona. How do I really define this? What's the problem that my customer has? That's going to be another slide in your pitch. And that's going to take some work to really figure that out. And that means going out and talking to customers. It means trying to figure out who they are, what you're actually trying to solve for them. So all of those pieces have to be a part of your pitch, which means that you're going to be going back over all of these boxes in the long run to get to a full pitch.
And that's really what all the badge system is about.
And that really is what all the badge system is about, is that this is kind of high level, do it once, get the big picture view of everything. And then the rest of the badges are digging in deep and figuring out how do we do this really, really well. I'm going to turn off the share real quick too, just to see if we can get conversation going this way as well. So
I think I'm just contemplating. I think there's definitely a few boxes I'm going to have more trouble with than others, but unfortunately, you said I can't use AI, which that's my favorite tool to use right now. So I'm anticipating the thought process of going into this.
well, again, Celeste, the reason I'm saying don't use AI, at least for the first run through, is to really get your brain working. AI is great for helping you sort of brainstorm some ideas and get some thoughts going, but AI is not going to solve it for you. And really, you've got to have a good concept of how all of this stuff fits together. And AI is kind of like GPS when you're trying to go someplace, that you can get there without actually knowing how you got there. you know, you wind up at your destination and you really can't remember what the route was, and you probably couldn't follow it again. So that's why I'm suggesting don't use AIs, because you really do want to know how you got there. You want to be able to do this again. You want to be able to think about this again and go back over it. And then when you go out and talk to customers or partners or investors, you want to know how you got here, because you want to know how they're going to get to the value that you have as well.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Yeah, I understand.
Again,
Unfortunately.
yeah, no, I get it. I get it. AI can make things really, really easy. And I use it a lot too, especially for composition things and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to brainstorming, again, you can start with AI, but don't let it become the GPS that gets you to your destination without really knowing how you got there. The journey, the pathway matters, and you need to know it, especially as the entrepreneur. You really need to know the path, how you got there.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. I feel like all the questions I had were mainly about like the process of going into it, and I feel like they've actually been answered already. So I feel kind of
Good.
bad I don't have any questions for you. Sorry.
That's all right. It really is fairly straightforward. It's being able to help see the narrative of what this actually looks like. So
I think you explained it very well. It made sense to me. So I think
good.
my simple brain.
Well, thanks, Celeste. That sounds great. Luke, how about you? Anything you want to ask?
Um, excuse me. No questions. I would throw out, you and I have talked about this before, and so I got all my questions answered previously, and I wish I could remember them to ask them now, but I think a lot of them would have already been answered by previous discussion. One thing I really see this being valuable for, though, is a way to quickly just throw ideas around with other entrepreneurs, and I can just give a quick snapshot early on, like, this is something I'm thinking about. What do you think about? And it's a good way to pass information on with like-minded people and kind of start talking about these things. So I think it's a cool tool for that kind of communication.
That's a fantastic point, Luke. Absolutely. By even throwing it up in the community, getting some feedback on it, but particularly when you're having one-on-ones, you're able to talk about stuff, and you're saying, "Hey, I've got a business idea. Here's how it looks." And when you can talk about it in these kinds of categories, now people can really give you detailed feedback about what might work, what might not work. Are you sure you got your problem down? Have you thought about all the alternatives? What about this alternative? When I'm out of shape, I go and do this, and it's something completely different. I like to go hiking. Maybe a woman doesn't even want to go to maybe she just wants to go hiking. That's an alternative. I didn't put that down there. That's a whole different thing. That's being able to do it by yourself. Maybe there's an activity that she genuinely loves to do that would help get her in shape, and she just decides she's going to invest in that, and she gets other friends to hold her accountable. That could be another way to do it, but it may still not meet the same kind of needs that a gym would. So again, those kinds of discussions, though, you can have when you've got it all written out, and it changes the way that you talk.
Yeah, it's a great tool for keeping conversation centered around an idea, and so I see a lot of value that way.
Yep, that's very good. Good. So again, like we said with John, you will wind up, as you go through your pitch, you're going to wind up going through all of this. The cost, you're going to have a detailed view of really what are the kind of expenses you're going to have in your business. If you're going to get to a pitch or a business plan, however you want to do it, but again, in the think tank, we're really focusing on the pitch, because then you can have those conversations like we're talking about right now with Luke. The cost, they're going to have to be detailed. The revenue, you're going to have a P&L, a profit and loss statement at some point or another. All of those are detailed forms of this. This just gives you a high-level picture so that you've got something to start talking about it as a business and see where all the pieces fit together. And now you've got a roadmap a little bit more too about how to actually start building that business. Start with a customer. Talk to customers. Figure out what they need. Are you right? And if you're not, that's a great thing, because then you really learn something. When you're wrong about an assumption that you're making and you find out that you're wrong, you will never forget it. If you're right, you'll remember it mostly until you're wrong the next time. But when you're wrong, you really learn something. So that's always a good thing, is put down your assumptions, get everything out there, and then go test them out. Go talk to people and figure out whether or not you're right or not. And be happy. Get excited about being wrong. It's a great practice to get into. All right, well, guys, thanks again. This has been a pleasure, and we're going to do the second one. We're going to start talking about the customer persona, which is really honing in on blank number one here, and it's also the primary precursor before you start doing your problem and solution, which are really going to be the first two slides of your pitch. Most of the time, you want to start your pitch with the problem. What's the situation you're bringing a business into? But before you can do a problem, you need to know who you're solving that problem for and who has that problem. So that's the big part of that, of badge number one. Customer profile is really all figuring out who is it that we're trying to solve, who is it that has the problem we're trying to solve, and then customizing our solution to meet that particular need.